the last main trend we're going to talk about, and I guess it's not so much as a social media trend, but I think it's worth including because it has skyrocketed in terms of even Google searches. When and it's being driven by obviously the biggest social media company, Meta, or Facebook as it used to be called. So it's being driven by a social media company. So there is going to be elements um, included in social media platforms. So I thought it would be wise to mention it. Um, and this is the metaverse. So what is the metaverse? Well, it can be described as various different things, but I'm going to try and succinctly explain exactly what it is. Um, so it's a 3D virtual world basically focused on social connection. So what does that mean? So it's seen to be the next version of the internet. So we've seen obviously, from you know, art and paintings to imagery to photography to basic internet to virtual reality and so on. So it's almost going to be the next version of the internet, and it plans to be more immersive than any online experience that you've ever had before, where you are actually in the experience with other people um, in real time. Now that sounds a little bit like virtual reality. However, the key is that it's not in isolation. Um, it's in a live environment. So let's try and break it down here. So it's a massively scaled interoperable network of real-time rendered 3D virtual worlds. So um, what that basically means is that you have this world. So it's this huge world, either a replication of the real world or a virtual world, and that can be experienced in real time, synchronously and persistently by an effectively unlimited number of users. So thousands of people can all experience this one experience in real time. Um, and so with that comes an individual sense of presence, but also the continuity of data, history, objects, payments, whatever. So theoretically, we put on a virtual reality headset, which is what it's going to be, or some sort of headset, and I'm going to go into a shopping mall, Victoria Square, whatever, and I'm going to be able to go into a shop, and I'm going to be able to pick something off the shelf. And if, say, somebody else was able to do the same, they would see that instead of there being 5 items on that shelf, there's now 4 items on that shelf. So it's real time, and I'm going to be able to go up to the counter and purchase that item, and it's the transaction is going to go through and all. So that's some of how this is intended to work. Um, Other things that we could potentially do is obviously we've seen this work from home culture. So you could have your office working from home, but everybody in these virtual reality headsets where people can be sitting around a board table through their avatar or their caricature, if you want to call it that, where they can write on blackboards and whiteboards and you can all see instead of on a Zoom. So that is potentially something that we can do with the metaverse. Learning and education. So we've obviously seen universities and schools work remotely over the last while, but now we could actually, have schools or education settings and have that sort of experience. So the likes of the Open University, which work remotely, could potentially use something like this where they are seeing this in real time. So it's an immersive experience. Um, we could also all attend a concert with our friends from a famous singer or whatever. This was sort of almost replicated by Travis Scott on Fortnite recently, where he conducted a concert on the Fortnite platform. Now it wasn't just quite as an immersive. Now it was an immersive experience. I think 12 million people tuned into it, so huge sort of um, audiences attending that, and that's something that we see in this metaverse. And we've mentioned, the shopping experience as well, coming down the line with this metaverse. Now, it may not be for 2022. It may be for further years, but it's something that we're going to hear more and more of. And In terms of social media and maybe marketing in general, Mark Zuckerberg's announcement was that this metaverse is going to encompass every one of our products. So his products are Facebook and Instagram, WhatsApp, Messenger, and Oculus. So it's going to venture onto social media now. In what shape or form, I don't know. Do they know? Possibly. But it's going to be something that we're able to experience in various different formats. Some other quick notable trends. So we've seen businesses use social media as a form of currency. So there's a Canadian-based company called Milk Up. It's like a coffee shop, ice cream, donuts, and so on. And they were basically allowing people to come in, have a coffee and a donut, and exchange for payment. They were asking people to create TikTok videos of them enjoying the video. On the way out, they showed them the TikTok video, and instead of payment, they were tagged in the TikTok video, and that was the form of currency. So, will we see more brands branching out and doing a social media currency? Or perhaps, who knows? There'll be an increased emphasis on social listening and really using advanced tools to monitor campaigns, listen to what people are saying around various themes and topics, looking at sentiment, so how positive and negative people are towards various different segments and topics and so on. We've seen more and more short form vertical video, so holding your phone in a vertical shape, which lends itself to TikTok and Instagram Reels and so on. There'll be a renewed focus on accountability and diversity, where more and more brands will speak out on social issues and take a accountability for all things, including their employees, their stance on various topics and so on. And we'll also see the increase of social media for customer service and that after sales service, and resolving problems on social media as opposed to the typical ringing or calling or emailing. One thing, another notable trend is the local targeting will become more and more prevalent, and that's where we've probably seen a shift in local SEO, local search engine optimization, over the last number of years, and that's going to be something quite prevalent on social media this year, where people are targeting and tagging locations, so they can target local businesses, local consumers, and so on. And also we'll see this inclusivity, and that's based around those social issues as well, and brands taking a stance and weighing into the conversations around issues that are happening in day to day. So some last tips, I suppose, and advice on how to maybe you can capitalize on some of these trends. And obviously, we spoke a lot about the platforms and the ads and the engagement and so on. And that's, if you can leverage video as much as possible, you can capitalize on some of those trends, creating relatable, relevant content for your audience. So content that people can really relate to, that engages them and is personal to them. And the whole idea around social media is being social. So you do need to keep it conversational. You want people to comment on this, so it needs to spark some sort of conversation. Try and invest in design tools. So, even basic things like Adobe Spark to create videos. There's lots and various different apps that you can get on your mobile. TikTok, Instagram, all have various filters and AR and VR functionality that you can use to create really, creative content. And this as well is actually a big trend, and something that has almost come full circle. It used to be, don't post too much on social media. You don't want to annoy your audience, and then again, it came to sort of, you need to post often or as much as possible on social media to really gain traction with your audience and to be present and so on. And it's now almost came to the point where, rather than create 10 posts of mediocre quality, create 3 or 4 really great posts in order to get that, virality or shareability or engagement. So it's almost really come nearly full circle. So it's quality posts over quantity. So thank you very much, and for listening today.